Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Anabaptist Perspectives. I'm here again with Matt Landis. We did a previous episode, so if you haven't watched it, link below. And this is in his office here at Landis Computer. Technology, this episode's a lot more about technology. The previous one was more about social media. But as a general rule, technology has fundamentally changed our world, really, in the last 20 years or so. Historically, as a general rule, Mennonites have always been a little slower to adapt new innovations. We've always been kind of cautious. How can we cope with this new emergence of all of this new technology?
One of the things about first being slow to adopt new technology, that is very much a perception. The interesting thing is Mennonites, in some areas of technology, so for example, when it comes to business technologies, engineering technologies, solar technologies, surprisingly Amish adopt solar kinds of things perhaps before a lot of other people.
Now that's interesting.
So it's not all types of technologies that Mennonites and even Amish, and I don't claim to be an expert on Amish, but it's really information and communication technology where they tend to be very, very slow.
Kind of like the digital age, basically, computers, all that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when someone asks a Mennonite to talk about technology at their church, they're not thinking about medical technology. They're not thinking about CNC machines or any. They're thinking about communication and information technology and how that affects us. So it can be overlooked, but that's usually what they're looking for. So recognizing the highly significant part of communication and information technology in shaping our lives. So yeah.
So why is that? Like why the ready adoptance of some technology and not others?
I think Mennonites and conservative Anabaptists are very, very sensitive to what shapes them as a people. Very sensitive. They just have a hair trigger sensitive sensor for those kind of things.
Yeah,
and media ecologists, or people that study media, Neil Postman, for example, he has noted that when you change information and communication technology, it has dramatic effects on how people interrelate, even more so than transportation. So I think Mennonites, because of their being sensitive to that, they've noticed that. And that's why they, of course, depends how conservative and Anabaptist people, even transportation is, they have some questions about it. But most in the, let's say the conservative Mennonite and Anabaptists, it's largely information and communication that they're really pushing back on.
Because of that perception that it has such profound effects on culture and even, really how we view the world. If now you get your whole world just kind of encapsulated by the smartphone in a way, that really changes your perception of everything around you.
It has a dramatic shaping effect. You have this people, older people often complain about it, that people are in their phones as opposed to talking to each other. But it, no matter how we look at it, it does have a dramatic shaping effect. It connects people that otherwise never would talk. At one time you could depend on spatial separation, living back a farm lane to be separate from other people. Well, social media and technology changes all of that. So.
Well, and even really, I live in Tennessee, like 9 hours away. We've never met until, online. You saw a video I posted, and you messaged me about it, and it happened, and now we're here doing this. That would have never happened 10 years ago. So how do we cope with the internet age? Because we kind of are in a new age now of the internet.
I would say that we cope with it in the same way that the church has been faithful throughout history. And, that is being a people that are transformed by Jesus. So that, that's at the heart of it. We can think about, methods to try to, tweak how we do things. But at the heart of it, Mennonites believe that is the foundational changing thing. And by repentance, which is changing your mind about the way you think about things.
Bringing it back to the core of what makes us who we are.
I think it was a sociologist in the 60s, Jacques Ellul. He said that a lot of people think that they can use technology to fix the problems technology has created. But he said it's always too late. And I think he's on to something. So, maybe a way we would think about that today is, okay, so we're going to fix the problem of having access to, inappropriate content, photos, for example, pornography. Maybe a way to apply what he said is a filter alone, another piece of technology, won't entirely solve the problem because it's a little too late. So really what you have to have is a fundamental change of your life. And not to say none of the rest helps, but certainly a fundamental change, repentance, and a new person. So,
what has the Anabaptist response been to the digital age?
One of the things that I have done because of my interest in technology, I have surveyed between 25 and 30 statements that Mennonites and Anabaptists have made. I've noticed about 9 things that seem common between them. And so to answer the question, what has our response been so far? Well, number one is, in culture, technology really dominates. It's kind of the kind of shaping paradigm. It's kind of the thing that shapes. Whereas Anabaptists and Mennonites, they feel like it's Jesus and the community of Jesus followers that really has to shape us. So it's and because of that, they're thought of as people that don't use technology. But when everyone, or when a significant number of people see technology as kind of the hope for the future, and kind of that thing that drives what people think, and then there's a little group of people here that don't accept that, it's very easy to look like they don't accept technology, but I don't think that's the case.
So when it comes to technology, like what are some, for Mennonites, some misconceptions that we have of it, because we're not always right, but then what are some correct things as well?
So I think one of the misconceptions that you hear is that this is the first technological big transformation that we've had in history. And it's just not the case. Going from an oral culture to a written culture, and many of the arguments, you can look at ancient literature and you can see many of the arguments of going from an oral to a written culture sound like arguments against social media, for example.
That's
so
interesting.
It's really, it's not like there was never, and you could look at, going from an oral to a written, and then you went from a handwritten to a printed culture. That was another dramatic shift, and each time that happened, it was a big transformation that the church had to respond to, or had to move through. And I think one of the things we often say, young people, they're looking at their phones all the time. Well, one of the things I like to point out is think about us older folks and how much we look at clocks. And you'll say the young folks, young people, their phones drive their lives. But for older people, clocks drive our lives, and we have no concern about that whatsoever. So technological transformation, it continues to happen, and we only usually are thinking about the very latest one. But I ask myself, when is there tension in my life, and what causes it? It's often a clock that is responsible for it. Just acknowledge technological transformations have happened throughout history, and the church needs to yes, judge technology, discern technology, and make that move an appropriate way. So I'd say that's a common misconception.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, well then what are some correct perceptions that we have?
I was going to use this as a misconception and a right conception. So often when people talk about technology, they say, technology is neutral. It's just how you use it. You often hear that, and Mennonites often talk in that language. But interestingly enough, in the philosophy of technology, they no longer think that that's a good way to think about it. So another we talk about misconception, but right conceptions. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus does say, if something offends you, and it talks about a body part, then cut it off. And I think Anabaptists are perhaps among the very few that believe at some point you can cut things off if they continue to be offense. The idea that you can cut something off is not un-Jesus-like. When do you do it? Obviously, there's lots of questions. Groups have put that point at different places. Individuals have put it at different places. But the idea that you can say no to something. In the past, Mennonites have said no to TV pretty unanimously. But that idea that you can say no as a group is kind of a radical idea, but one that is probably not a wrong idea.
As far as, how do we, as a people, as Anabaptists, move forward in an intentional way, not, completely, isolating ourselves from new technology, and the flip side, just swallowing them, because I have some friends that did that too. They went the other way, just fully adopted all these new things. Where's the middle ground there? How can we move forward in the future?
I think Anabaptists have been among some of the most intentional users of communication technology.
Really? Okay.
That's not often thought about, but when I have reviewed what Mennonites, all the effort and all the things they do to be intentional and very thoughtful about what they do with technology, they may be among the most intentional users of communication technology. Kevin Kelly wrote a book, What Technology Wants. It's a fascinating book. It's a really interesting read. But one of the interesting things he says, and maybe he gives Mennonites too much credit, but he says, and maybe I'll just read it here, he describes Anabaptist technology discernment by noting that paradoxically, the Amish and conservative Mennonites are far more scientific than most secular professionals about technology that they adopt. They, typically non-religious consumers tend to accept technology on faith, based on what the media says, with no testing at all, as opposed to conservative Anabaptists really testing this thing and giving a pressure test to say, how's this thing going to affect us? Which is really interesting, and I think a right way to do it. Maybe we don't always test it as good as we should. Maybe Kelly gives us a little more credit than we should get. But it is true. There's a lot of thought and a lot of, how's this going to affect us? And what's this going to do to us? Thought put into it.
That is fascinating, and I think that's going to come as a surprise to a lot of people who watch this. Because I think the perception often is, from the outside, or from other groups of Mennonite that aren't doing it the same way, maybe, is that they're just not thinking through this, and they're just kind of being, just say no to all of it, just to make sure we got the bases covered. That's really encouraging to hear it's not that way.
Yeah.
Thank you all for watching another episode of Anabaptist Perspectives, and thank you again, Matt, for doing another one with us, and maybe we can do it again sometime. This has been really good.
Good.
Very educational for me, and hopefully for a lot of other people as well. So if y'all want to see more videos like this, just comment maybe a topic you would like to see, and feel free to subscribe and like this video if you want to see more. And we'll catch you guys in the next one.